When I took the first shot, I took one step up, a stair up, so I could see his whole head shot.
Where did the first shot hit him?
First shot, straight through his head.
Everybody assumes that it has to be disparaging.
Once again, you're doing this tactic.
Because it's not a tactic, it's facts. It's facts.
To some other reason.
It's facts.
There's a certain arrogance that comes with thinking you're untouchable, especially when you're on the wrong side of the law. But no matter how slick or invincible these criminals believed they were, reality had its way of catching up, humbling them in the harshest ways imaginable. So here are some times cocky killers got humbled.
A man is accused of killing several people at a home in Collin County. 37-year-old Michael Patton was booked into jail for capital murder of multiple persons.
Around 7:20 p.m. on February 19, 2021, Salina police officers were called to the 3100 block of Hickory Lane in response to a shooting. The caller was identified as 39-year-old Michael Patrick Patton, who reportedly told the 911 dispatcher that he had just shot his wife and that there was a fire in the master bedroom of his home. He would say his children were inside and that he was outside standing with a gun in his hand. En route to his location, Patton made a second 911 call, contradicting his initial statement and claiming he had no idea what happened to his family. By the time firefighters from the Salina Fire Department and police officers arrived on scene, Patton handed over his gun and allowed firefighters to look for any survivors inside his residence. Now they found his wife, 36-year-old Tamara Jo Patton, and his kids, Kendall and Evan, with gunshot wounds. They also found the family's 3 dogs and 1 cat burned to death. Patton was taken away for questioning, and this was the moment his story took a wild turn. You see, on paper, Michael Patton was a genius. He worked for the defense contractor Raytheon as a rocket scientist, boasting an exceptionally high IQ. But even with that, Patton just couldn't outsmart a murder charge.
I don't have being arrested. I feel like I need somebody to help me with what's going on, because I don't have any idea what's going on.
At the start of his interrogation, Patton put his brilliance to the test by claiming he had no idea what was going on. He was also cautious enough to refer to his son with autism using present tense, to seem as if he had no idea he was already dead. And when the detective wanted more on the story, he said this.
Why do you think we're here today? I'm confused on why we are here. You don't remember anything from today?
She had one of the guns and was saying that their only way out.
Say that one more time.
She said the only way out was to basically cut herself and wouldn't leave the room.
Michael tried shifting the blame to his wife, trying to deceive the detective into thinking she killed his kids before killing herself and setting the whole place on fire. He even made up a fake story about how she once took a gun and attempted to take her own life.
I kept trying to get the gun away from her. After about 2 hours, I got it away from her.
The idea was to pin all 3 deaths on his wife, even though Patton clearly stated himself in his 911 call that he was the killer.
In middle school or high school, she went to counseling. Just recently told me that she was abused when she was a kid.
The detective clearly wasn't buying this BS and was more interested in what happened that day than his wife's childhood history. So when he asked Patton for the truth, he gave this ridiculous reply.
Why do you think you're having trouble focusing, or why do you think you can't remember stuff from today?
I had a really bad concussion in high school, and so my short-term to long-term memory isn't always there.
He claimed to have short-term memory, yet he wasn't hesitant to talk about the things his wife did a few months back, or what he knew about her childhood. When they probed further by asking if Patton at least remembered what he ate that day, he went silent. Turns out Patton wasn't a genius, because if he was, he should have asked for a lawyer right from the start. But anyway, he eventually found out that his performance wasn't Oscar-worthy, and that he'd be going to jail.
You're going to be taken over to the Collin County Jail. You're going to be under arrest for capital murder. Capital murder.
December 2022, Michael Patton was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. I guess he learned the hard way that dodging a murder charge isn't exactly rocket science.
So how did you? Person.
I know you're not.
I'm a very smart criminal.
You are.
I've got a criminal mind.
Okay.
I do.
Isaiah was a little bit too confident when describing how he murdered his grandparents in their own home. He might have fancied himself a clever mastermind, but in reality, he was nothing more than a fool. During his interrogation, he tried feigning remorse by shedding tears and had no hesitation in confessing his crimes.
I want to go back so bad.
How come?
Because I loved them so much, and they didn't deserve that.
When you say what happened that night at the house, what happened?
Shot both of them.
Okay.
However, his true emotions came to life when it was time to discuss the guns used in both murders.
Black, bolt action, 10 or more round clip. It's Czechoslovakian.
Okay.
AR-15.
Okay. Okay.
For context here, Isaiah Sweet's parents, Stacy Sweet and Christopher Galley, were never married, but were together for about 5 years. Both had a history of drug abuse, with Stacy openly admitting to a cocaine addiction. Now, when Isaiah was just 4 years old, he was actually assaulted by a neighbor. This traumatic event forced Stacy to place Isaiah in the care of her parents, Richard and Janet Sweet. Now, Stacy knew she didn't have the best parents, with all the verbal and physical abuse she went through, so it was far from an ideal situation. But after getting abandoned by Christopher and with other children to care for, she felt she had no other choice but to leave Isaiah with her parents. And that turned out to be the worst decision she could have ever made, because her parents raised this little kid to be a monster. They moved to Iowa when Isaiah was 7 years old, and made sure he never got to speak with his mom. Now, he was abused by his grandfather, Richard, and would also drop out of high school in his junior year, with a grade point average of 1.061. Now, despite those poor grades, Isaiah would brag to his classmates about his intelligence, and kept acting like grades didn't matter. Now, to him, maybe they didn't matter because outside of school, he got himself in trouble with the law, stacking up a long list of criminal records, from curfew violations and possession of illegal drugs to sexual assault and theft. Now, at some point, he had planned to move to Pennsylvania to live with his mom and attend Penn State University. Well, let's just say his rebellious ways had caught up with him, and those dreams never came true. May 11th, 2012, 17-year-old Isaiah Sweet got tired of the constant arguments with his grandparents, so he decided to kill him. Initially, he went and got a bat and tried at least 15 times to strike the back of his granddad's head, but he just couldn't bring himself to do it. So instead, he went and took an assault rifle from his grandparents' room and loaded it with hollow point rounds. He knew they would do the most damage, with his grandparents' death being painless.
I had earmuffs on and everything. I took a point like this, stepped up one stair so I could see my grandpa's head. Boom, pulled the trigger back, pulled the bolt back, shot my grandpa twice in the head.
He describes how he shot his grandparents like he was talking about some action movie.
She moved right after I shot her.
Okay. Did she look at you? Did she say anything after you
She
shot
like twitched. And I thought maybe, it's probably just the twitch they get after they die.
Isaiah left out a few key details to his story. For one, he claimed to have kissed his victims on the forehead after they were dead, but there were no blood stains on his clothes to back that up. After the murders, he grabbed a sawed-off shotgun, a knife, an assault rifle, a TV, some clothes, and $9 from his grandparents' wallets before leaving their house. He then stashed the rifle and shotgun with some friends and drove to Cedar Rapids, where he hopped between 8 different apartments, making his drug deals and partying hard. And at these parties, he would even brag to his friends and girlfriend about the murders. So the following day, he was arrested for driving with a suspended license, and when asked about his guardians, Isaiah had lied that his grandparents were at a medical institution for elderly people. Now, what he didn't know was that his neighbors had already made 18 calls to 911, reporting his grandparents' death. And when Isaiah was confirmed to be a suspect, he was arrested and interrogated just like we've seen. But one thing throughout the interrogation was that Isaiah thought he was some type of good citizen for cooperating with the cops.
I feel really good about myself being so compliant though.
He believed that he'd get a reduced sentence in court, but no way that could have happened. This guy kept contradicting himself and making up fake scenarios. And of course, he had to brag a little more about that shooting.
I mean, there's probably some traces of guts and brains on my feet because I kept stepping on people and it was really gross.
What were you, were you barefoot when you shot him? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Stepped up the second stair, took 2 more shots.
At Grandma?
At this point, I'm sure you'll all agree that Isaiah wasn't just a fool, but a narcissistic, egotistical maniac who had no idea what he was doing. He eventually got served with justice and was handed a life sentence with the possibility of parole. As of right now, you can find him at Iowa State Penitentiary in Fort Madison.
21-year-old Brian Cohey murdered and dismembered Warren Barnes in 2021. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole.
On the night of February 27, 2021, Warren Barnes, a homeless man living outside of downtown businesses in Grand Junction, Colorado, was sleeping under a bridge when his life was taken away in the strangest way imaginable. Brian Cohey, who was 19 years old at the time, had been plotting to murder someone for the past 6 months. He craved the rush of knowing what it would feel like to take a life. Now, he was looking for homeless people or prostitutes because he believed society didn't care about him. So on this day, Brian Cohey had been passing through the area when he spotted 69-year-old Warren Barnes sleeping. Cohey approaches Barnes with a knife, a mask, 3 layers of gloves, and proceeds to brutally murder him. Cohey had seen Barnes laying under this canvas upon arriving. He walked up to him, knife in hand, pulled back that canvas, and stabbed him in the neck. Now, Barnes tried to fight, screaming out for help, but Cohey just kept on stabbing him until he was dead. During the attack, Cohey partially decapitated Barnes, so he would further mutilate his body and place a few of his body parts into plastic bags before driving home. Now, here's the thing. After Cohey changed out of his outfit and stored Barnes' body parts in his closet, he tried catching some sleep, but got anxious thinking that maybe he left some fingerprints behind. So he drove back to Barnes' body, put it in his trunk, and headed for the Colorado River, where he dumped it into the water. However, as he tried to leave, his car slid into the river and got stuck. The police were called to the scene and found Cohey, but he was released without suspicion. He returned home with his hopes, thinking that his crime remained undiscovered, and it did. Until his mother made a shocking discovery. You see, about a week later, Cohey's mom, Terry, discovered a plastic bag filled with maggots in his room while helping him tidy up. She took it to the kitchen sink and called Brian's father to open it up, and they soon discovered that it was a decaying human head. Therefore, the couple immediately calls the cops and Brian was taken away for questioning. During his interrogation, he wasted no time in confessing to his crime. He was also proud in describing just how he got on top of Barnes to murder him.
And how did you get here?
I heard someone.
Okay.
This is him. I was strapped on top of him like this.
Okay.
And he couldn't fight back. It was actually surprisingly easy. I was barely breaking a sweat. I thought, homeless guy.
And if you care enough to know why he committed that murder, well, here's your answer.
Well, I was willing to do anything, whether it be good or bad, just to gain notoriety, fame, influence.
Now, apart from the fact that he showed zero remorse for his crime, Brian kinda got cocky by thinking he had the law all figured out. He told the detective the most amount of years he was gonna get for the murder.
So, Murray going to jail for the 15 years probably?
I have no idea.
It's for sure. I mean, I'm going to jail for 20 probably.
And while it seemed like he didn't care that much, he was completely wrong. He thought he was going to get 15 to 20 years. But eventually he would get a life sentence without the possibility of parole, meaning he's spending the rest of his life in jail.
The next 15 years of my life look set in stone. Prison. If I go back tonight, probably wouldn't have done it.
Don't mistake that for Brian feeling remorseful. If he could go back in time, he wouldn't change a thing. Only because he wouldn't want to get caught, maybe. Whether it was Barnes or someone else, Brian was bound to take a life eventually.
I think you are a serial killer.
You're wrong.
I think you did kill these women.
No, sir.
I think these families of these women, they need...
This is over.
They need
That's it.
justice.
Captain.
Here we have Piers Morgan taunting a convicted killer about the dozen women he claimed to have murdered, before later recanting his confession. Now, Mark Reeby's currently serving a life sentence in a Florida prison for the 1988 murder of pregnant mother Donna Callahan. But just 1 year into his sentence, Reeby began sharing some gruesome details of multiple other unsolved murders. He later claimed that he had been tricked by the US government into those confessions and adamantly maintained his innocence ever since. During this ITV serial killer documentary, he sat for an interview with Piers Morgan. And let's just say things didn't turn out as he may have imagined. The interview began with Pierce trying to find out why he made those confessions in the first place. He then tried cutting off the interview early when Morgan confronted him with photos of his alleged victims.
Over a period of time, that you killed 13 women.
This is what Detective Haley has put out. This was supposed to be
I understand.
Nothing like this. I see where you've been and got all your information. Captain, we through here.
No, Mark. Let me explain.
Mark Reeby seemingly had a normal upbringing from a fairly large family. He was raised by his parents, who loved him, as well as his 2 sisters and a brother in Florida. After high school, he did a brief stint in the Army and returned back to Florida, where he proceeded to have 4 marriages and 5 children. Now, he was never really on the radar of police until his half-brother, Alex Wells, while serving a lengthy prison term for an attempted abduction as well as a convenience store robbery, confessed in a prison Bible study group that he had participated in killing a woman. Some inmates overheard that confession and alerted the authorities. Police called Alex in for questioning, and he revealed that he and his brother, Mark Reeby, went to a convenience store with the intent to rob it. However, they ended up strangling 29-year-old Donna Callahan to death before dumping her body in the woods. Mark was arrested and convicted of first-degree murder, leading to his 25 years to life. But while incarcerated, Reeby began confessing other murders to his mother and sister. Detective Dennis Haley was brought in to question him, and he admitted to killing 12 girls and women. Now, since women were his primary victims, he must have harbored some kind of hatred for them, right? So Pierce Morgan was determined to find that out.
You like women?
Yes. I'm not. There's nothing like that.
Do you respect women?
Yes, I believe I do.
But if he didn't hate women, and if he didn't commit all those murders, then why did he confess to them in the first place? That's a question Pierce wanted an answer to. And when Special Agent Dennis Haley, the man Reeby allegedly confessed those murders to, was asked, he had this to say.
No, there's just too many details about certain murders. He had information that only the killer would have had.
Reeby took cops to the location where some of those crimes were committed. But now he claims that none of that ever happened, and he only made that confession because he feared his son was in danger.
So an investigating agent gives you all this information, and now he says you gave it to him.
I call it the deal with the devil.
I mean, is any of this even believable? He just kept spewing a ton of garbage. From claiming he was protecting his son to saying Agent Haley used him to promote his career. Now keep in mind that Haley is just a special agent investigating crime every day, so how could he have possibly wanted to make a great career out of Reeby's confession? Now, to some extent, it was pretty obvious that Mark Reeby wasn't being truthful to Pierce, and definitely wasn't being truthful to himself. So Pierce had to call him out on it.
You see, Mark, I don't believe you. I don't believe you.
I don't care.
I think you are a serial killer.
You're wrong.
I think you did kill these women.
Faced with the truth, Reeby tore his mic apart and stormed out.
To begin with.
Why don't you sit here like a man?
Sitting here, nothing.
I know I'm not a 110-pound woman that you can kill. Huh? You did kill them, didn't you?
We start, though, with breaking news. 2 parents are convicted of killing their newborn baby.
I'm innocent. I didn't do it because there was no evidence whatsoever that proved anything about me putting my hands on my kids. I've never done it. I never would.
This is Chris McNabb, a man convicted of killing his own daughter. But rather than yielding to the hands of justice, McNabb tried challenging the judge, only to regret his actions almost immediately. October 7th, 2017, McNabb's wife, Courtney Marie Bell, reported to the cops that her daughter was missing from a bedroom in the trailer park where they lived. The following day, her daughter's lifeless body was found in a wooded area right next to the trailer park. She had died of blunt force head trauma. Bell and McNabb feigned ignorance of what must have happened. They claimed someone might have broken into their trailer park and taken their daughter away while they slept. Now, their story seemed quite odd, and law enforcement did some more digging, only to uncover a crazy truth behind what exactly happened that day. For years, McNabb and his wife were meth heads. It was more of a sickness than an addiction. Plus, there were also previous reports of domestic violence between the couple. But trust me when I say that's not even the worst part yet. On the morning of their child's disappearance, McNabb and his wife claimed they fell asleep around 5 a.m. and woke up at 9:30 to a text from McNabb's father. They stated that at 9:30, their 2-week-old baby, Kalia, and their 2-year-old daughter, Clarissa, were both safe and sound. But by around 10:30, they woke up again to a toddler yelling that Kalia's gone. Now, their story didn't add up because despite claiming to have fallen asleep at 5 a.m., Facebook shows that McNabb changed his profile pic just before 6 a.m. and sent a message to a lady named Courtney Morris at 9:42. So if McNabb claims the killer broke in at around 10:30, that's a ridiculously small time frame for anyone to have broken in, let alone kidnap a child without raising an alarm. Now, Kalia was found in a gym bag, wrapped in a blanket and an outfit belonging to McNabb. There was also a pair of brown shoes found beside this bag, which McNabb claimed must have belonged to the kidnapper. However, that was later disputed, as McNabb actually dropped off those shoes a week earlier while spending time in the woods. Now here's the thing, there wasn't any physical evidence to pin McNabb and his wife to the murder, but prosecutors did anyway, and McNabb was pretty pissed about it. Before his sentencing, the judge presiding over the case, Judge John Ott, asked McNabb if he had anything to say to the court, giving him room to pour out his frustration on everyone.
I was beat as a child, and I don't agree with it at all. And I would never do it. I would never do this. That's all I got to say. I would never do it. I'm innocent.
The judge asks McNabb one simple question.
You claim you're innocent, so you tell me what sentence the man or woman that you claim did this should receive.
And his reply changed the course of his life forever.
If you ever find out who did them, they deserve to be under the jail.
Okay, so they ought to get the maximum sentence.
Most definitely.
Okay.
And we mean that literally.
On the crime of malice murder, I sentence you to life in confinement without parole. On concealing the death of another, I sentence you to 10 years in confinement, consecutive or after.
Judge Ott inadvertently let McNabb choose his own sentence. Talk about being savage. And best believe his wife wasn't safe from that savagery either. She was also handed a 30-year sentence with the latter 15 to be served on probation.
But you and I know you did this.
No, I did not. That don't even make sense.
It does make sense.
Okay.
Getting humbled by the law is one thing, but getting humbled by the law and Pierce Morgan is a whole different thing, and we'll explain why. In 2008, Kimberly Clark Saines was arrested on suspicion of murdering at least 5 patients at a Texas dialysis center by injecting bleach into their dialysis lines. The center, DaVita Incorporated, experienced a sudden surge in patient deaths over just 5 months, with a shocking number of fatal heart attacks and cardiac events. This alarming trend was highly unusual, prompting law enforcement to investigate every staff member. Their investigation, however, ultimately revealed who Kimberly Saines truly was.
I did have a good life, and subsequent another marriage and another child, and I was very happy.
Born in 1973, Kimberly had an almost perfect life growing up. She had a loving family and married her high school sweetheart. However, by adulthood, she found herself living outside Lufkin, a small town in East Texas. And by 2007, her life began just falling apart. First off, her husband files for divorce. That same year, she was arrested for public intoxication and criminal trespassing after a domestic disturbance with her husband. And although they would eventually reconcile, Kimberly just wasn't the same anymore. April 28, 2008, Kim shows up to work and was told by her supervisor that she had been reassigned that day to work as a patient care technician. But this didn't sit well with Saines, who felt that role was beneath her. Subsequently, 2 patients at the clinic saw Saines prepare a bleach solution and pour it into a container on the floor. The witnesses claimed to see her draw the bleach up into a syringe and then inject it into the IV lines of 2 other patients receiving dialysis. Her supervisor confronts her, but Kim says that she was only using bleach to clean the lines of the unused dialysis machine, a common practice at the clinic actually, and only used a syringe to get the precise measurement needed. She would deny giving anyone medication or injecting bleach into their IV lines. She was eventually fired while this investigation went on. And alas, they found that bucket of syringes Kim had been using on the patients all tested positive for bleach. She was arrested and convicted of murdering 5 patients while leaving 5 others injured. Now, Kim spared the death penalty, but was given life in prison without the possibility of parole. However, despite numerous testimonies from witnesses and even evidence against her, Kim maintains her claim of innocence. And if there was anyone outside the courtroom to verify that, Piers Morgan's the guy.
There's just a lot of things that was never said, and I believe it's time to speak out. And I find you a very reputable person, and I was trusting you for the story.
In this interview for Fox News with Piers Morgan, Kimberly tried painting the narrative that she was being framed by the shady dialysis clinic she worked for.
There was a lot of things that happened, and I was falsely accused of something, and that's why I'm here today. But I know that I didn't do anything that would have done anything to harm another patient.
Now, while Kim was working at this clinic, a patient she was accused of murdering ended up with multiple bruises on her arm. Kimberly was responsible for caring for this patient. So when Piers asks her about these bruises, she tried to avoid the question.
They would drop her off in the waiting room, and half the time they wouldn't even tell anyone she was there. And we would have to go looking for her, and it's very sad.
And when he pushes further, her explanation was way off.
Do you know how she got the bruises?
I could not physically lift her into the chair. I was too short.
But you wouldn't need to lift her to create bruising, right? I mean, you could.
Yeah.
If it was,
yes, sure.
So if that didn't make sense to you, well, it's because nothing she said actually made any sense. On the outside, she doesn't seem like a person who wants to kill. And even on the inside, Kimberly didn't believe she was a killer.
In you to kill somebody deliberately?
Do I know? No. No, not at all.
Go ahead and believe whatever you want, but reality says that Kimberly killed all those people.
You think they're all lying?
Yes.
It's you that's lying here.
I don't think you've looked into all of it.
At this point, Piers Morgan hit her with that same reality.
Sometimes the easier thing is just to admit it. That's the path to atonement. You're in denial to yourself.
And just like she has done for more than a decade, she runs away from the truth.
I really thought you were going to help me.
Help you what?
Help me to get the truth out. Thanks a lot.
I think we did get the truth out.
I guess he got in your pockets too.
December 2017, Ellis Nelson was convicted for murdering his girlfriend's son, Giovanni Mayes, whom he'd been living with and caring for. Ellis started dating Sonia Hernandez, Giovanni's mother, a year before this tragedy. The couple were living peacefully until Sonia Hernandez introduced Ellis to her children, and this for some reason angered Ellis, and it got worse when Hernandez brought him over to live with her and Ellis. Now, one of her kids was frequently abused by him. The child sustained many injuries here and there, but ultimately in July 2017, this abuse led to his death. Now, Ellis and Hernandez were both arrested for murder. They each denied murdering Giovanni and pled not guilty in court. At his sentencing, Ellis insisted on his innocence, claiming he never harmed Giovanni and was only trying to help. He flared up as the judge went over the evidence at the trial, and he just couldn't bear to hear the words the judge called him.
Some of the bruises were in the shape of a belt buckle.
I ain't gonna let you say. I ain't gonna let you sit here say this.
That you put this child and other child in a...
Sheriff deputies had to step in and lead him out to the courtroom hallway. By the time he returned, though, the judge presiding over the case, Judge Mark Trusick, went all out in humbling him. On the conviction of first-degree murder, Ellis was given life in prison without the possibility of parole, and then he got an extra 80 to 150 years in prison for first-degree child abuse. You are the lowest form of human life. You're a monster, and quite frankly, you're evil. You should never be allowed out of prison. You will die in the prison system. On the flip, Sonia Hernandez also got some jail time. She was given 57 months to 10 years in jail after being found guilty of second-degree child abuse and perjury.
It is disrespectful to me that you think I would come in here purposely and treat this like a joke or a game. Your life is not on the line. Mine is.
November 21st, 2021, 39-year-old Daryl Brooks barreled through Waukesha, Wisconsin's annual Christmas parade in a red 2010 Ford Escape, going about 40 miles an hour, ignoring barricades and a police officer who tried to stop him by banging on the hood of his car. Brooks plows through the crowd like hot knife through butter. The entire incident was live-streamed, which really blew up on social media. But the real shocker, the man behind the wheel was none other than Math Boy Fly, a Milwaukee rapper you've probably never heard of. While Math Boy Fly, real name Daryl Brooks, might not be topping any charts, he's been making his mark in a different way, through a long rap sheet dating back to September 1999. However, just 3 weeks before the parade, he was arrested for running over his ex-girlfriend with the same SUV during a domestic dispute at a gas station. And if you needed any more proof that this guy had completely lost it, his antics during the trial were outrageous enough to be legendary. After the SUV was linked to Brooks, he was slapped with 5 counts of first-degree intentional homicide. The case blew up nationwide, catching the attention of First Lady Jill Biden. As the investigation dug deeper, Brooks faced an avalanche of 77 more charges, including 61 counts of first-degree recklessly endangering safety with a dangerous weapon, 6 counts of hit and run involving death, and a couple counts for felony bail jumping and domestic abuse. Nonetheless, that's when the real courtroom circus began. Now, despite knowing almost nothing about the law, Brooks decided to represent himself in court. Judge DeRoe, who had the patience of a saint, had to put up with Brooks's constant interruptions, backtalk, glaring, and any other outbursts that actually got him kicked out of the courtroom more than once. It was pure chaos from start to finish.
You need to stop right now or you will be removed.
Remove me then.
All right? He will be removed. He cannot simply stay quiet when this court talks.
Anyway.
November 16th, 2022, Brooks was handed 6 life sentences without parole, set to be served concurrently. The judge also gave him 762 years of initial confinement and 305 years of extended supervision for 61 counts of reckless endangerment. As for the 6 hit-and-run charges, he got another 150 years. Now, many say Judge DeRoe's verdict came from the hours of frustration she endured while presiding over the case. But for a man like Brooks, we don't think he deserves anything less.
Frankly, Mr. Brooks, no one is safe from you. This community can only be safe if you are behind bars for the rest of your life.
I am not sorry for something I didn't do, and I am not sorry for the things I did do.
That was the moment Ronnie O'Neill finally pled guilty in one of the most horrifying cases you can imagine. It's March 18th, 2018, Riverview, Florida. We have 29-year-old Ronnie O'Neill carrying out a series of unthinkable acts. He would shoot and kill his ex-girlfriend, Kenyatta Barron, before subjecting his daughter, Renivia O'Neill, to unspeakable violence, ultimately killing her with an axe. At 11:43 p.m., a gut-wrenching 911 call came in from a woman in clear agony. While it's not accurate to say the police ignored it, 8 long minutes would pass before Ronnie himself called back, pushing him to act. Now, during this call, Ronnie, an African-American, would claim to have been attacked by white demons, falsely blaming Kenyatta as the attacker. He gives the cops his address, and they arrive at the apartment by 11:49 p.m., just a minute after his call. What they found was nothing short of a nightmare. Kenyatta was unconscious in the yard, their daughter brutally murdered, and Ronnie's son stabbed and bleeding out. But Ronnie wasn't done yet. He set the house on fire, adding even more chaos to the horrific scene. This guy wouldn't go down without a fight either. The cops had to tase him just to get him into cuffs. After spending 3 years in the Hillsborough County Jail, Ronnie was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted first-degree murder, 2 counts of aggravated child abuse, 1 count of arson, and 1 count of resisting arrest. During his sentencing, Ronnie probably thought he was in some kind of Law and Order sitcom, coming out saying some of the most bizarre things you've ever heard.
I'm sorry for your loss.
But when he was done, the judge took control, making him understand that this was one of the worst cases he'd seen in 19 years.
19 years I've been at this job.
I've seen human beings killed at the hands of others in every way imaginable. This is the worst case I have ever seen as far as the facts go.
Subsequently, she sentenced him to 3 consecutive life sentences plus an extra 90 years to be served concurrently. She wasn't only disgusted by his actions, but by his sheer lack of remorse. This guy needed a reality check, and there was no better person to give it to him than that judge. And as of right now, he's locked up for the rest of his life.
I would submit that this case is probably the most difficult and shocking case that this county and St. Johns County has dealt with.
That was the cold, emotionless reaction of 14-year-old Aiden Fucci as he got sentenced to life for murdering a high school cheerleader, Tristan Bailey. His reaction might have not been crazy, but his actions leading to his crime definitely were. May 9th, 2021. Tristan's body was found just hours after her family reported her missing. For context, Tristan Bailey was one of Stacy and Forrest Bailey's 5 kids. She was a student and cheerleader at Patriot Oaks Academy in Florida. Aiden Fucci also attended that school and lived just a few blocks away. They weren't particularly friends, but Fucci had a disturbing obsession with her. During his court hearing, Aiden's girlfriend, whose identity wasn't disclosed, revealed that Aiden had this crazy obsession with killing. She said he talked about it a lot and even shared plans of dragging someone out into the woods and stabbing him just a month before he murdered Bailey. It was clear he needed help, but before he could get any, his dark thoughts led him down that path of evil. On said day, Aiden asked his friend for Bailey's phone number. Once he got it, he lured her via text to come over to a mutual friend's house. Surveillance footage catches him walking down the street where her body would later be found. And an hour and 45 minutes go by with that same camera catching Fucci walking back alone while carrying his shoes in his hand. Bailey's body was later found with 114 stab wounds, 45 of which showed she fought back desperately. That's horrible, but it's not the worst aspect of this story. Now, while searching for Bailey, investigators found a deleted Snapchat message from Fucci to his friends. He was in the back of a patrol car, taking a selfie and holding up a peace sign. He then captioned that photo. "Hey guys, has anybody seen Tristan lately?" Now that cocky move wasn't smart, and it also made him the prime suspect. He was eventually arrested for second-degree murder when the weapon used was traced back to him, and his clothing had Bailey's DNA all over it. Still acting like a cocky fool, Aiden and his mutual friend that helped lure Bailey made a video while sitting in the back of a cop car.
We're having fun in a f***ing cop car.
Yep. Tristan.
What's up, guys?
Yep.
Tristan, if you f***ing walk out the damn...
When you see this in a month...
What a sick, twisted kid. But all that pride went away when he was tried, not only as an adult, but given the max sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole.